Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we are going to taste one of the big guns from Bordeaux, Chateau Latour. Let's open a new and long-planned segment of the Sediment channel, the 1855 Bordeaux Classification, where we get to know and taste through the 1st-Growth wines. We can naturally start at the 5th-Growth and work our way up, or begin at the top and taste all the way down. Or we can mix and match as we go, just as I plan to do. And today we are going to start with one of the grands, the OG of the 1st-Growth Bordeaux wines, Chateau Latour. If you want to know more about the 1855 Bordeaux classification, I have made a video about it and I will link it in the description. But before we taste, let's discover this legendary estate and its wines. Chateau Latour has a long history dating back to the early 14th century. The heart of this estate has been the enclos, the land surrounding the chateau, which also includes vineyards just a few hundred meters away from the river, hence the moderating effect and the unique terroir. As with every single famous estate in Bordeaux, the ownership changed hands frequently. And because the owners never really lived here, no chateau or living space was built here until the 19th century. This is why you will find a tower on the label rather than the magnificent castles often seen on other Bordeaux labels. And if you manage to pass through security and visit this estate, you will notice the original tower is not there, as it was demolished in the 15th century. What some think is the original tower was actually built in the 17th century and does not appear on the Chateau Latour Grand Vin label. However, it is on the label of the third wine, Pauillac de Latour. Although in the 14th century this holding was probably not closely linked with winemaking, by the 18th century it was already a well-established name and highly respected amongst wine connoisseurs. This is why it was placed alongside Chateau Lafite as the 1st-Growth in the 1855 classification. In 1993, Chateau Latour was acquired by Artemis Group and remains under its control today. They have invested in analyzing the soils within the enclos, which led to the division into more than 80 different plots. It references not only different soil types, but also grape varieties, their age, and clones. This was followed by the introduction of 3 separate rooms where around 90 stainless steel tanks of different capacities are held, allowing each plot to be vinified separately and therefore its characteristics observed in more detail. We have not talked about this on my YouTube channel, but many Bordeaux wines, especially the top names, are sold en primeur. This means that the wine is sold before it is even bottled, and potentially it should be bought at a better price on en primeur than when it is released. It was a huge surprise when Chateau Latour announced that they will no longer be part of en primeur system. Instead, they will cellar their wines themselves and release when they think they are ready to drink. Hence the 2015 vintage on my table, which as of today is the latest release of Chateau Latour Grand Vin. Interestingly, many people not closely connected to wine may have heard about Chateau Latour. However, not many will know that it comes from Pauillac AOC. Pauillac is home to 3 of the 5 1st-Growth Bordeaux estates, making it one of the most important communes for quality wine. Without wanting to generalize, Pauillac is usually praised for its structure and power in wines. However, as I mentioned in my 1855 classification video, it is the estate that is classified, not the land. Therefore, chateaus can acquire new lands and potentially increase the production volume of their wines, including their Grand Vin. And from little under 40 hectares of vineyards in 18th century, Chateau Latour currently owns almost 100 hectares of land. However, it is the enclos that is responsible for the majority of Grand Vin produced. The soils here are very gravelly, and outside its borders, the soils become increasingly dominant by clay and sand. Therefore, the further the wines are from the enclos, the more likely these grapes will be reserved for the Ports de Latour and Pauillac de Latour, the second and third wine respectively. There is no doubt in my mind that Chateau Latour takes terroir very seriously. By that I mean preserving the precious terroir so it can continue to deliver the highest quality for the future generations. This includes using biodynamic preparations, horse plowing to limit soil compaction, and avoiding herbicides at least within the enclos. The age of the wines is marked with different ribbons, and the younger wines are harvested separately, with their fruit going into the second wine, while fruit from the mature wines is reserved for Grand Vin. The dominant grape variety in the vineyards is Cabernet Sauvignon, making up well over 70%, followed by Merlot, with a very small percentage reserved for Petit Verdot. They used to have Cabernet Franc, but 2017 was the last vintage where it was used, and now it has been replaced with Cabernet Sauvignon. However, the blend of the Grand Vin is usually made from 90% or more Cabernet Sauvignon with very little additions of Merlot. The Grand Vin is aged in 100% new French oak, while the use of new oak is reduced for the second and third wines. And since 1999, Chateau Latour wines have been bottled without filtration. Now that we have discussed all the work, energy, and investment that goes into the wine, does the price point make a bit more sense? But we have talked enough, let's finally taste the wine. By the way, this bottle was sourced directly from the estate cellars, so we do not need to worry about the provenance here. Despite the fact what I said in the introduction, that they release the wine once it is ready to be drunk, this wine actually has so much to offer. On the nose, I do feel the sweet toast, rosemary, and hints of garrigue, but overall, I think this wine is slightly closed, which completely makes sense. And you know what they say, the bigger the artist, the longer the pause. So make sure to open this wine or older vintages when you have plenty of time to spend with it, because you will need to follow its development, the way it opens up in the glass, probably for hours. To be completely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of 2015 vintage, despite it being highly rated. It is really sunny, quite hot, and even dry, so I think it made wines a bit more, maybe too concentrated, too rich, too opulent. But here on the nose, it seems really fresh. It doesn't have that kind of jamminess that I maybe would expect from 2015 vintage. And it has that tiny, delicate black and blueberry character accompanied by these sweet spices. It is opening up slowly. Let's taste it. Wow! You know, Chateau Latour is usually described as this big and powerful and highly structured wine. However, I do think that there's this elegance in it, and there's this purity in it. It has 97% Cabernet Sauvignon, and I'm surprised how beautifully managed the tannin structure here is. It is chalky, it is finely grained, something that you do not usually expect from Cabernet Sauvignon because the tannins can be quite large and coarse sometimes. But the structure on this wine is really, really beautiful. And I get what they say about the power in Chateau Latour. It is definitely there, but in no way it is aggressive or big or in your face. It is really laid back, despite it being 2015 vintage, which you would expect to be bigger, bolder. I'm really impressed about the freshness they have been able to retain in this vintage. The question lies, of course, whether or not it is really worth of that price. Another point I want to make, there is trend towards less oak in the winemaking, and I myself don't necessarily think that oak in general is bad for the wine, because there are wines that require oak, and this one has 100% new oak. And I mean, it does not seem oaky or overpowered by it. It just adds an extra layer to the wine, and it gives extra room for it to develop these flavors and characteristics, these tertiary notes. Unfortunately, this is not wine that I can afford regularly or rarely even, so I am a bit sad that I opened it here on camera, the 2015 vintage. I think it would speak greatly in the glass after 20 years or even more. I mean, these wines can definitely age, and it says so in the glass. And I think the most beautiful part about it is that, as I mentioned before, the tannins are so lovely. The alcohol, I did not even feel it. It is just beautifully integrated within the wine. And for those of you who enjoy a bit more fresher and more powerful and richer style wines, you can definitely open it right now. And for those of you who prefer wines with a little bit of age, it for sure will live another 20, 30 years, no problem. Let me know in the comments which 1855 Bordeaux Classification wines I should taste next. And if you like this video, make sure to watch this video next.